The man's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the dog. That was the first thing Quinn Alderman noticed when the doors slid open. Not the blood, not the tactical gear, not the fact that a 200-pound soldier had tears running openly down his face in the middle of a packed ER waiting room. It was his hands, the way they trembled around the German shepherd's ribcage like he was terrified that if he loosened his grip even slightly, something irreplaceable would slip through. Quinn had been on hour 13 of a 14-hour shift. Her feet hurt. Her back hurt. She had eaten half a granola bar at 11 that morning and called it lunch. She had already handled 2 cardiac events, 1 drug overdose, a kid with a dislocated shoulder from a trampoline, and a woman in her 80s who kept insisting the nurses were stealing her slippers. Quinn was done. She was so close to done she could taste it. And then the doors opened, and she saw the dog. The shepherd was a big one, maybe 80 pounds, light, tan, and black, the kind of build that said working dog, not pet. His name tag read AXIS in block letters on a worn leather collar. He had a field dressing wrapped around his left flank, already soaked through, and his breathing was shallow and labored in the way that made Quinn's chest tighten on instinct. She had seen that breathing pattern before. Overseas, in places she had spent 4 years trying not to dream about. The soldier carrying him was a big man, mid-30s, still in his fatigues. His name tape said, Colbert. His face was the color of chalk. Please, he said to no one in particular, to everyone, to the universe. Please, somebody help him. The waiting room went quiet the way rooms do when something real walks in and displaces all the ordinary noise. Quinn was already moving before she fully processed why. How long has he been bleeding? She asked, reaching for Axis's collar, tilting her head to check his gums. White. Not good. Hour, maybe more. There was an incident at the training facility. The fence. Colbert's voice cracked. He steadied it. He pushed me out of the way. He always does that. That's just what he does. Quinn's hands were already checking the dressing. The wound was deep. Not unsurvivable, but close. Bay 3, she said to herself, then louder to the tech behind the desk. Yolanda, I need Bay 3. Quinn. That was Donna Ferris's voice, cutting across the waiting room with the efficiency of a woman who had spent 22 years in hospital administration and never once second-guessed herself. Quinn, stop right there. Quinn did not stop. Quinn. Ferris's heels clicked on the linoleum as she crossed the floor. She was a trim woman in her late 50s, silver hair cut close, reading glasses on a lanyard she never actually used for reading. She ran the Millhaven Regional ER the way a colonel ran a battalion, through the sheer, absolute force of her expectation that everyone would comply. That is an animal. This is a medical facility. You know the policy. He's bleeding out, Quinn said without turning around. That is not our concern. There is a veterinary emergency clinic on Route 9, 14 minutes away. He doesn't have 14 minutes. Ferris stepped in front of her. Actually stepped in front of her, blocking the path to Bay 3, and Quinn had to stop or walk through the woman. You will not bring that animal into my ER, Ferris said. Her voice was very calm, the kind of calm that comes from being used to winning. I will not have the liability, I will not have the contamination risk, and I will not have my staff diverted from human patients. Do you understand me? Colbert made a sound. It wasn't a word. It was the sound a person makes when they have run out of words and only grief is left. Quinn looked at Ferris. She looked at Axis. She looked back at Ferris. With respect, Quinn said, I hear you. Then she went around her. Quinn. Ferris's voice sharpened. I am your supervisor. I am giving you a direct order. I know. Quinn pushed through the Bay 3 curtain. Call whoever you need to call. She heard Ferris behind her, calling someone. Yolanda, probably, or security, or God himself. Quinn had stopped listening. Lay him down here, she told Colbert, patting the exam table. Gently support his hindquarters. Colbert obeyed with the careful, practiced motion of a man who had done this before, moved an injured partner to safety without making things worse. Quinn noticed that. Military hands, not civilian hands. What unit? She asked, not because it mattered medically, but because she had learned years ago that talking kept people present, kept them from going somewhere else in their head. 3rd Special Forces. Fort Bragg, originally. We've been at Keller for the past 8 months, training cycle. Quinn was already cutting away the field dressing. The wound was a deep laceration, ragged, probably from a chain link edge based on the pattern. Contaminated, she needed to irrigate, debride, and get pressure on the bleeders. He's been your partner how long? 6 years. Colbert's jaw worked. He came to me green, wouldn't take a command from anyone. Took me 3 months just to get him to trust me. A pause. He's saved my life twice. Formally. Documented. And probably 4 or 5 other times nobody wrote down. Quinn glanced up. Colbert was looking at Axis the way you look at someone you cannot imagine the world without. She understood that look. She had worn it herself once over a man named Okafor in a trauma tent outside Kandahar, pumping his chest and screaming at him to stay with her. He had stayed. Not everyone did. I need to know his blood type, she said. DA positive, Colbert said immediately. I know his whole panel. I made sure I knew. Quinn paused for just a second. Of course he did. Of course he knew his dog's blood type the way most people know their own. Okay, she said. I'm going to need to source some blood. He's lost too much volume. Even if I close this, his pressure is going to. What can I do? Colbert asked. Tell me what to do. I'll do anything. Quinn thought for exactly 2 seconds. Yolanda, she called toward the curtain. The tech appeared, looking nervous. Behind her in the hallway, Quinn could see Ferris on her phone, pacing, shooting glances toward Bay 3 like she was timing something. I need a unit of canine-compatible packed cells. Call Dr. Eames at Millhaven Veterinary. He's consulted here before. He'll know what we have in the blood bank from the research facility. And I need a proper surgical kit, not the field kit. Yolanda hesitated. Yolanda. Quinn's voice was quiet and very certain. Please. Yolanda went. Ferris appeared in the curtain gap. Her face had moved past calm into something Quinn recognized as pre-consequence, the expression of someone who has already made the decision and is just waiting to deliver it. Dr. Eames has been contacted, Ferris said. He is on his way. You will stand down and let him handle this when he arrives. How long? 20 minutes. Then I need 16 of those minutes, Quinn said. He'll have something left to work with. Quinn. Ferris stepped fully into the bay. Her voice dropped, not softer, but lower, more deliberate. You are making a very serious mistake. This hospital has policies that exist for legal reasons, for safety reasons, for liability reasons. I have supported you through a lot in the 2 years you've been on my floor. I have looked the other way on your methods, your schedule flexibility, the incident with the Harmon family last February. I have been in your corner, but I cannot protect you from this. Quinn didn't answer. She was focused on the bleeders, working fast and clean. You are risking your license, Ferris said, your career, everything you've worked for. He pushed his handler out of the way of a fence collapse, Quinn said, not looking up. He took the injury instead of letting it happen to someone else. That's what he did. She tied off a bleeder. He was doing his job. Ferris was quiet for a moment. You were Army, she said finally. It wasn't a question. Combat medic, 2 tours. Another silence. Something moved across Ferris's face that might have been understanding, or might have been something else entirely. Then it closed. You're suspended, she said, effective immediately. Badge and access card on the desk before you leave this building. She looked at Colbert. Sir, I am sorry for your situation, and I genuinely hope your dog receives care. But this is not the place. Then she left. Colbert looked at Quinn. His face was very still. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Finish telling me about him," Quinn said. "About Axis. Keep talking." So he talked. He told her about the first time Axis had found a tripwire in a compound outside Mosul, sitting down in front of it so calmly you'd think he was resting, not saving 9 lives. He told her about the team's tradition of singing Axis happy birthday every year, even though none of them actually knew what day he was born. So they'd picked a random Tuesday in March and just made it official. He told her about the way Axis slept, always with his back against something solid, some wall or boot or leg, because he'd been trained never to be exposed, and the habit had just stayed with him. Quinn listened and worked. She got the wound irrigated and closed, 12 sutures, clean lines. She got the fluids going. By the time Yolanda reappeared with the blood bank contact and confirmation that a compatible unit was being pulled from the research facility 3 floors up, Axis's breathing had steadied incrementally. Not out of the woods, but breathing. Quinn stepped back and looked at her work and let herself feel, for just 1 second, the particular exhaustion of having done the right thing at significant personal cost. It wasn't noble. It just was what it was. "He's stable for now," she said. "Dr. Eames will be able to take it from here." Colbert's hand was on Axis's head. The dog's eyes were open, barely tracking him. "Hey, buddy," Colbert said softly. "Hey, I got you. I'm right here." Quinn pulled off her gloves. She thought about her badge. She thought about the access card she'd have to leave at the front desk. She thought about the suspension and what came after it, the review board, probably the documentation, possibly her license if Ferris pushed it hard enough. She was still thinking about all of that when she heard the sound from the hallway. It started as a change in atmosphere. The ER had its own ambient noise, monitors, voices, the squeak of shoes on linoleum, the low hum of the ventilation system. Quinn had worked in it long enough that her brain filtered most of it automatically, but atmosphere changes the way pressure changes before weather. Something shifts, and your body knows before your mind catches up. The waiting room went quiet first. Then she heard footsteps, not one set, many sets, moving in the kind of synchronized, deliberate rhythm that Quinn hadn't heard since she'd been embedded with a unit outside Jalalabad. Military footsteps, the kind that have covered a lot of ground and have no interest in pretending otherwise. Colbert heard it too. His chin came up. Something in his posture shifted, not to alertness exactly, because he'd been alert the whole time. To recognition. Quinn pulled the Bay 3 curtain aside. The ER hallway was full of men. 8 of them in civilian clothes, but carrying themselves with a kind of posture that civilian clothes couldn't disguise. Big men. Quiet men. They moved through the space with an economy of motion that cleared a path simply by existing, not through aggression, but through the fundamental principle that no one wanted to be in the way of whatever this was. At the front was a man Quinn put at around 45, weathered face, close-cropped gray at his temples. The kind of stoneness in his eyes that comes from having made decisions under circumstances most people couldn't imagine. He wore a gray jacket over a dark shirt, nothing that announced anything. He didn't need to announce anything. He looked at Quinn. He looked past her at Colbert. He looked at Axis. "Sergeant Colbert," he said. Colbert straightened. "Old reflex. Commander Rice." "How is he?" "Stable. She—" Colbert's voice caught. "She didn't let him go, sir." Rice looked at Quinn, not the way Ferris had looked at her as a subordinate making an unauthorized decision, but the way you look at someone when you're taking a real accounting. Like he was seeing the whole situation and drawing an accurate conclusion from what he found. "Alderman," he said, reading her name badge. Then, quieter, "Quinn Alderman, combat medic, 75th Ranger Support, 2 tours, that right?" Quinn blinked. "Yes." "I know your file," he said simply. Not threatening, just informational. The other men had spread quietly through the ER hallway. not blocking exits, not advancing on anyone, just present in the way that mountains are present, simply, immovably, taking up the space. At the nurse's station, Ferris had appeared. She was watching from behind the desk with the expression of someone recalculating a situation they had thought they had fully mapped. Rice walked toward her without hurrying. Quinn stayed in the Bay 3 doorway, close enough to hear. "Ma'am," Rice said to Ferris in a tone that was entirely courteous and somehow still removed all possibility of argument from the room. "I understand there's been a personnel matter this evening." Ferris lifted her chin. She was not a small person, professionally or personally. "There has been a policy violation involving an unauthorized procedure on a non-human. Axis is a military working dog," Rice said. "He holds an active service record, a performance commendation from the Joint Chiefs, and a classified operational designation that I'm not at liberty to share in the setting." A pause. "He is, in the eyes of the United States military, a member of a special operations unit, with all that that implies." Ferris blinked once. "The nurse who treated him tonight," Rice continued, "acted in accordance with her training, her oath, and her judgment. She made her call under pressure. In our world, we tend to think highly of people who can do that." He tilted his head slightly. "I would hope this institution shares that value." Ferris opened her mouth. "I should also mention," Rice added very mildly, "that Senator Whitmore has been a personal friend of Commander Colbert's family for many years. He's been made aware of the situation. He tends to take an interest in how our veterans and their service partners are treated." A very slight pause. "I thought that context might be useful." The color left Ferris's face. "Not all at once, but the way a tide goes out." She started. "Nurse Alderman," Rice said, turning back to Quinn, "your suspension, is there documentation in process?" "I was told to leave my badge," Quinn said. "Keep it." He looked at Ferris. "I believe there may have been a miscommunication about what happened in Bay 3 this evening. Medical personnel responding to a life-threatening situation involving a member of an active military unit. That's actually barely clear-cut under Federal Statute 10, USC 1090. He said the statute numbered the way Quinn said blood types, not for show, but because he simply knew it. I'm sure the administration here will want to review the record with that context in mind." Ferris said nothing. For possibly the first time in 22 years of running an ER, she said nothing. One of the other men, younger, a scar at his jaw, the kind of quiet that suggested he was the one you actually needed to worry about, stepped to the nurse's station and laid a card on the desk. He didn't say anything. He just placed it there and stepped back. Rice gave Ferris a small civil nod. Then he walked back to Bay 3. He stood in the doorway and looked at Axis for a long moment. The dog's eyes were still open, still tracking Colbert's face. 14 years of working dogs, Rice said, more to himself than to anyone. "I've lost 2. It doesn't get smaller." He looked at Quinn. "Thank you, Nurse Alderman." He pushed Colbert out of the way. Quinn said, "It's what he does." "Yes," Rice said, "it is." Dr. Eames arrived 11 minutes later, moving fast, pulling on gloves before he was through the door. Quinn walked him through everything she'd done: the irrigation, the suture pattern, the fluid protocol, the blood compatibility decision, and he listened with the focused attention of someone who takes information seriously regardless of its source. "Good call on the fluids," he said, "and this closure is clean, really clean." He looked at her over Axis's back. "You've done field work." "Some," Quinn said. "More than some." She didn't argue. She stayed through the handoff, answered every question Eames had, made sure Colbert understood the post-operative monitoring Axis would need. She wrote everything down, twice, because she had learned long ago that the difference between a good outcome and a bad one was usually documentation. When there was nothing left to do in Bay 3, she walked to the break room and sat down in one of the hard plastic chairs and looked at her hands for a moment. They had stopped shaking. She hadn't noticed when. Yolanda appeared in the doorway. She was holding 2 cups of coffee and had the expression of someone who had witnessed something they would tell the story of for a very long time. "That commander," Yolanda said, handing Quinn a cup. "The tall one. He talked to Ferris for like 10 more minutes after you went back in. I couldn't hear all of it. But she looked," Yolanda searched for the word, "small. She looked real small." "That's not something I was aiming for," Quinn said. "I know." Yolanda sat down across from her. "But it happened anyway." Quinn drank the coffee. It was bad. The way hospital break room coffee is always bad. Bitter and burned, and exactly what she needed. "You're going to be okay?" Yolanda asked. "I'll find out tomorrow," Quinn said. But she already knew. She had known it in Bay 3, working with her hands and listening to Colbert tell her about a random Tuesday in March, and a dog who always kept his back against something solid. She had known it the way you know things when you've been in enough situations that stripped everything else away and left only the essential question: what is the right thing to do right now? The right thing was rarely the easy thing. She had learned that a long time ago, in a trauma tent, over a man named Okafor, pumping his chest and refusing to quit. She had learned it again tonight. Outside in the hallway, she could hear Colbert's voice through the Bay 3 curtain, lower now, quieter, the particular register of someone talking to a creature who cannot answer but understands everything. "You did good, buddy. You hear me? You did real good." Quinn finished her coffee. She pulled her badge from her pocket and looked at it, her name, her photo, the Millhaven Regional logo in the corner. She turned it over once. Then she clipped it back to her scrubs. She had 1 hour left in her shift. She was going to finish it. "I keep thinking about Quinn's hands, the way she just kept working. Sutures, fluids, pressure, while someone stood behind her dismantling her career out loud. Most people would have stopped. Most people would have at least flinched. She didn't. There's a version of that night where she walks away, where she hears Ferris say 14 minutes to the veterinary clinic on Route 9 and decides that's not her problem, where she clocks out, goes home, sleeps. Nobody would have blamed her. The policy was real. The risk was real. The risk was real. And Ferris wasn't wrong that a suspension, a review board, a licensing challenge, those things don't just disappear. They follow you. But Quinn had already seen what Axis did. He pushed Colbert out of the way of a fence collapse and took the injury himself. That's not instinct exactly. It's something closer to character, something that gets trained in, yes, but also chosen over and over until it becomes the only thing you know how to do. I think that's what she recognized, and I think that's why she went around Ferris and through that curtain. What strikes me most about the whole story isn't the moment Commander Race walked in, though that moment matters. It's the fact that Quinn did what she did without any guarantee that moment was coming. She didn't know Special Forces were on their way. She didn't know anyone was going to show up and cite federal statute and make Ferris go quiet. She acted on what she knew was right in a room where it looked like right was going to cost her everything. And she did it anyway. That's the thing about integrity. Real integrity, not the kind you perform when people are watching. It doesn't negotiate with outcomes. Quinn wasn't calculating odds. She was just answering the question in front of her. What is the right thing to do right now? And the intelligence piece matters too, more than people give it credit for. She didn't just act on feeling. She assessed the wound, made a correct call on the fluid protocol, sourced compatible blood, closed the laceration cleanly enough that Dr. Eames remarked on it. Doing the right thing and doing it well, those aren't the same skill. Quinn had both. The moral clarity to act and the trained competence to make the action count. Then there's what it took just to stay in that room. Ferris behind her, her badge on the line, the full weight of institutional authority saying stop, and Quinn just kept her hands moving. That's not recklessness. That's the particular kind of steadiness you build from having already survived situations that asked more of you than you thought you had. Colbert said Axis had saved his life twice formally and probably 4 or 5 other times nobody wrote down. I think most of the meaningful things people do for each other are like that. Undocumented, unrewarded at the time, just one person deciding, in a quiet moment that nobody's watching, to not walk away. Quinn finished her shift that night. 1 hour left, and she finished it. I don't know a better ending than that.